take a moment to keep it real. If you're a gamer, you likely played tons of games without second thought if they got your attention with captivating visuals. Trailers and mass marketing do their job nowadays, but back in the day, you'd be wading through the arcade looking over at your Pac-Mans, your pinball machines, or whatever driving game was popular at the time. Until you come across this crazy new game from Japan with this shirtless, rootin' tootin' cowboy transforming into a ninja that fights samurai in the sky. If you have any curiosity at all, you'd approach that bright red cabinet, finding out it has Sengoku and 3 other games to choose from. Welcome to the Neo-Geo world. Sengoku brought a lot of people here in 1991. If you're younger, like me, you probably played it on either the Wii Virtual Console or SNK Classics Collection 1 on the PS2, PSP, and the Wii, where its weirdness worked its wonders just as effectively as its heyday. It's a beat-em-up released at a time when the market was crowded with skull crushers, thanks to Final Fight and Ninja Turtles' rampant success. Aside from more powerful arcade hardware, SNK set themselves apart from the swades of street brawlers by getting crazy. How wild does this setting get? Well, Nobunaga, the most notorious Japanese warlord, rises from his grave to lay waste to modern-day North America. Aided by all his troops, and many mythological creatures from Japanese horror stories. The only 2 people skilled enough to cut these fiends down to size are the descendants of skilled warriors. Let me remind you that one of these guys is a drop-kicking cowboy wearing hot pink pants. I'll get straight to the point. Sengoku's visuals are nothing short of an art piece, like a tapestry unfolding from a scroll. An arcade deemed proud to flaunt its muscle over cut-back home hardware. The 40 megabyte limit of Neo-Geo cartridges allowed the developers to create 6 long battlefields that connect ancient Japan to modern-day America. You'll leap from one realm to another effortlessly, without any interruptions or loading screens. 1 minute, you'll be kicking assassins off the Golden Gate Bridge. Then you'll be having a one-on-one duel standing atop a galloping herd of horses. Many of these backdrops are also animated, which this fight proves. But more impressively, there's only one recycled background in the entire game. Eat your heart out, Fred Flintstone. Every byte of memory is used proficiently, like your precious time, which isn't wasted. There's always something new to look at during the 40-minute conquest. Once you digest all that eye candy, you start hearing voices. The generals awaiting you at the end of each stage taunt you using crisp voice samples, pushing you to cut them down a notch or 2. All made possible thanks to outstanding 1991 system specs. It ain't 24-bit, it's overclocked 16-bit, and it means business. If you really want to appreciate the arcade advantage, you only need to glance at the Mega CD version to see how much detail needed to be sacrificed to bring Sengoku to weaker hardware. The gameplay survived intact, but the colors are washed out since the Mega Drive's graphical processing unit is nowhere near as nice as the Neo-Geo's. There's no background animations, you can't play with 2 players, and the voice samples are muffled. You'd still have to go to the arcades to play the highest quality games. It just wasn't feasible to release unrestrained home consoles at the time. With the hardware contrast established, Sengoku's team had the artistic touch, had the power, and the creative drive to draw us in. Looks aren't everything, though. You gotta make sure there's a good game to play in your video game. Visuals only cover the video part. Oh boy, where do I begin? The game plays like it was developed by a team that didn't touch any other beat-em-up, bringing good and ill into the combat. I'll start with the good, as the main game feature adds an enormous layer of intellect to fights that were fairly rich in strategy. 3 minutes into the game, you'll free the souls of a dog and a samurai from captivity, allowing you to transform into them to harness their superior powers. You can transform anywhere as long as you have time remaining on that character's clock. When your spirit's about to expire, you stow it away and fight normally for a while to let it recharge. On top of the boost in power, all 3 of your forms have new attacks and get different upgrades from collecting power-ups, creating the move list as we know it. Playing Sengoku effectively means pondering the best times to transform so it's not wasted on lesser enemies, and figuring out which form is most appropriate for the enemy type you're fighting. For example, your Hound's high jump makes short work out of these Sonic wannabes. They stand up and leave themselves defenseless when you're directly above them. Devil May Cry is famous for its Devil Trigger, where you guzzle your power gauge to turn into a badass triple damage demon. But Sengoku predated that by 10 years. There are also a few unintentional tricks you can use to gain the upper hand. Any fun game should reward you for being crafty and finding loopholes in the rules. Power-ups make you invincible for 2 seconds when you pick them up. That's intentional. It prevents you from taking cheap hits when you're drawing your sword. But you can delay the animation by jumping repeatedly, allowing you to pull a fast one on your adversaries instead. The rest of the game's structure is self-explanatory. You use your knowledge of the enemy patterns to survive, as any army only has so many men. Only one burning question remains. With the deepest combat of any beat-em-up until that point, why do other gamers not look upon Sengoku 1 so fondly? Sadly, Sengoku has 2 crippling design flaws that affect the entire game and make it much harder to appreciate everything that it brought to the table. The harsh difficulty curve raising eyebrows immediately. See, most beat-em-up games up until this point eased you into the experience with an easy first level to get you acquainted to the controls. In Renegade, you barely take any damage from the first few thugs you encounter, gradually getting tougher as you progress and become more proficient. Sengoku throws you into the deep end immediately with enemies that chop off 30% of your health with 1 hit. It starts merciless and it stays merciless. A lot of people put a quarter into the machine, lost all their health in 5 seconds, then walked away from the game in frustration. Fortunately, it doesn't become too much harder after that. If you can survive 1 level, you can survive all of them with perseverance. I and many other people can put up with imbalanced difficulty. Sengoku's possible to beat without continues, and many of the most memorable games of all time would be written off if that was the criteria for judgment. The real nail in the coffin is plain, sloppy inconsistency. You have lots of different animations for your basic ground punch, which looks cool, but for some inscrutable reason, SNK decided to draw separate hitboxes for each punch. Which means your blows can miss for no reason other than your dude decided to use the uppercut instead of the leg kick. This nonsense left a bad taste in players' mouths, thinking the game was cheap and rigged, effectively killing any chance Sengoku had of becoming a classic. The lack of polish also extends to the enemies. Every once in a while, they'll have massive brain farts causing their AI to deactivate entirely, or attack in the wrong direction until you slash them across the face. I have several theories as to why these mistakes are here, but that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, this combat is jank! The sword you get from the red power-up is a downgrade compared to your fists. You can't design beatable arcade games like this on purpose, especially when you get a proper upgrade in samurai form. This reeks of someone not knowing the best place to put the hitboxes on your attacks. Let's look at Konami's Vendetta, which came out the same year. Vendetta didn't reinvent the wheel like Sengoku did, but all your attacks are consistent. Your punches always land where you want them to every single time. Animation changes are also consistent. A finishing blow will always have a different animation than a regular punch. Its artwork is just as professional as Sengoku's, and you're given a fighting chance on the first level, especially if you're playing with 2 or more players. If you were given a choice between these 2 games, most people would pick Vendetta. It feels more satisfying to play since it always rewards skillful play, as opposed to 4/5 of the time. In conclusion, Sengoku is seriously flawed, but those flaws won't entirely deter the amount of fun you'll have with its insanity. You'll have a blast on your first playthrough, but I don't see many people being motivated to return, especially when a superior sequel exists. The ongoing overtone of not repeating mistakes made in the past applies here in full force. For the love of all that is fun, don't copy this game's hitboxes. I'm giving Sengoku a C+. This story is far from over. Come back next time when I review Sengoku 2. Thank you for enjoying the video. If you like this critique of Memory Lane, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Or even consider donating if you found it super informative.